Hello, everyone. Welcome to History That Hits YouTube. I will bring you videos that spotlight little known history, as it is extremely important to preserve and relay facts not taught in most American schools today. Please remember to like and subscribe so you know when the next video airs. Enjoy, and thanks so much for watching.
Before the world knew their name, before the medals, and before the parades, they were just young black Americans trying to prove they belonged to a country that did not want them. But they fought anyway, and the world would never forget them. It began in New York, 1916. Harlem was a sanctuary of culture, rhythm, and hope. But even here, the shadow of inequality loomed large. A nation gearing up for war, yet divided by color. Mothers had to teach their children a painful truth, that America's freedom did not yet apply to them. As the conflict across the Atlantic grew, black communities faced a burning question. Why bleed for a country that refused to protect you at home? From the Revolution to the Civil War, they had always answered the call. Yet, their sacrifice was routinely met with the harsh reality of Jim Crow segregation, racism, and denial. The debate raged on the streets of New York. Would this World War change their fate, or just repeat history? Despite the hardships, Harlem's heartbeat was undefiled. It was a community built on shared memory, survival, and an unyielding hope for the future. They built their own dreams in the shadows of a society that tried to keep them invisible. Then, April 1917, America officially entered the Great War. President Woodrow Wilson called on the nation to make the world safe for democracy. In Harlem, that call sparked a fierce debate. If black men bled for democracy overseas, would America finally grant it to them at home? Or were they simply volunteering to be used, discarded, and forgotten by a nation that feared their equality? The answer came in lines that wrapped around city blocks. Thousands of young black men stepped forward to volunteer. They faced open hostility, mockery, and rejection from the very military they sought to serve. Yet, they refused to leave the line. Among them were Henry Johnson and Lawrence Leslie McVeigh, carrying a fierce spirit that would soon alter history. They were designated the 15th New York National Guard, later reorganized as the 369th Infantry Regiment. They trained twice as hard as any white unit. They knew that a single mistake would be used to condemn an entire race. They endured insults from their own countrymen, segregated quarters, and systemic disrespect. But the 369th kept marching. They weren't just training for Europe. They were preparing to claim their rightful place in history. Winter, 1917. At Camp Upton, the psychological warfare began before the regiment even left American soil. The U.S. military distributed pamphlets warning French civilians not to treat black soldiers as equals. America's command feared something they deemed dangerous: the prospect of black Americans experiencing true freedom overseas. Back home, the burden fell on the women of Harlem, holding the community together through grueling double shifts.
Mothers faced the heartbreaking task of explaining to their children why a country their fathers were dying for treated them like enemies. Soon, the 369th boarded crowded transport ships, watching the Statue of Liberty fade into the horizon. But they did not sail in despair. They brought their culture, their faith, and their music with them. When they arrived in France, the Hellfighters experienced something entirely foreign: unconditional human dignity. French citizens shook their hands, offered flowers, and looked them in the eye, treating them as heroes, not second-class citizens. But back at headquarters, the American High Command refused to let black troops fight alongside white American soldiers. Instead,
the U.S. military effectively discarded the 369th, handing them over entirely to the French army. France needed fighters, and they welcomed the reinforcement. It was a painful historical truth. Black Americans had to wear the uniform of another nation just to prove the loyalty to their own. To the French military, the 369th were not servants or laborers. They were simply soldiers, judged solely by their courage. Soon, they entered the belly of the beast, the brutal, mud-clogged trenches of the Western Front. They endured poison gas, relentless shelling, and subhuman conditions, yet the regiment refused to break. The 369th would spend 191 days in frontline combat, longer than almost any other American unit. On one fateful night patrol, Private Henry Johnson and a fellow soldier were ambushed by a massive German raiding party. Outnumbered and wounded, Johnson fought back with staggering ferocity, using grenades, his rifle, and his bare hands. When his rifle jammed, he advanced with only a bolo knife, single-handedly repelling the enemy and saving his wounded comrade. For his unbelievable heroism, France awarded Henry Johnson its highest military honor. Back home, America barely noticed. This is a letter that he wrote to his mom. Dear Mama, the French treat us kinder than our own country does. But don't worry, we're still fighting hard for you and for home. Corporal Lawrence Leslie McVeigh played a significant role in the Harlem Hellfighters during World War I, particularly noted for his bravery during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, where he led an attack on a German machine gun nest. He was awarded the Croix de la Guerre for his acts of valor, contributing to the unit's reputation as one of the most distinguished American regiments in the war. But the Hellfighters didn't just bring steel to Europe, they brought soul. Led by Lieutenant James Reese Europe, the regimental band took France by storm. Their syncopated rhythms introduced an entirely new sound to the continent, spreading the gospel of American jazz across Europe. Even in the darkest shadow of global war, the Harlem Hellfighters managed to bring beauty, rhythm, and light into a broken world. Whispers spread through the German ranks of an unstoppable force, a regiment that never surrendered an inch of ground. The Germans gave them a nickname born out of pure terror, the Hellfighters, and the 369th wore it like armor. But glory came at a staggering cost. The battlefields of France were choked with the heavy price of freedom. For 191 days, the Harlem Hellfighters held the line in continuous trench warfare. They spent more time under fire than any other American unit. They never lost a trench. They never retreated. Their courage became the stuff of legend, earning them the highest honors from France. Yet their own nation remained silent. November 1918, the guns finally fell silent across Europe. Hi again. That's the end of part 1 of the Harlem Hellfighters. I'm going to post part 2 very soon. Please remember to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this historical information. I think it's extremely important to keep history alive. I will see you very soon. Bye.